Hey, what's going on, everyone? My name is Matt Jarbo. This is Stranger Days. And I've been covering the saga at Star Wars for quite some time. And by the saga, I'm not talking about just the films, but the internal turmoil going on behind the scenes. It's been a wild ride over the span of the last 6 years since Disney acquired Lucasfilm. And over the course of what feels like the past few years, it's gotten this weird kind of crazy, and I'm going to use the word here, toxic culture surrounding it, right? What you have is you've got fans like me that are like, wait a minute here. I'm not a huge fan with the way leadership is going. I'm not a huge fan of the way that Kathleen Kennedy is running the ship. And you got people, the NPCs on Twitter that are all like, demon, demon. You know what I mean? Like they unperson me because I don't like Kathleen Kennedy's style or Ryan Johnson's directing ability. Now, that being said, I fully understand the irony of calling them all NPCs or social justice warriors. It's a bit of a mixed bag in regards to the insults. But one of the things we can look at here is that there was actually a lot of people that were talking about what it was like to work at Lucasfilm, and it brought up their Glassdoor ratings. Now, it's kind of an anonymous rating system for businesses. It's one of the great things about working in the tech industry is you get a bitch a lot. But what we found out here is that according to this blog called Disney Star Wars is Dumb, which right now is the only people that are covering it, says that Glassdoor reviews of Lucasfilm paint an interesting picture. Thanks to an insightful Twitter thread, we can look into what life may be like for those working within Lucasfilm. The following are screenshots taken from Glassdoor reviews, presumably from former employees and everything else. So I'm not going to go through everything because ultimately this is a very long blog post. And reading through it, it was very fascinating to go year by year by year to take a look at just how the culture of the company has changed. And I've put together a whole bunch of screenshots here to take a look at. So what we've got right off the bat is 2008, the year Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was released. And you can look to see a little bit of what some of the ideas were like in Lucasfilm following that. Advice to management from the person here said invest more in talent and technologies that are nurtured at Lucasfilm. That would be ILM, Skywalker Sound, and LucasArts. Don't let good people and ideas walk away as they have throughout the history of the company. The cons are working on lousy films, working under intense pressure, no equity, mediocre pay, confused agenda for the future, and games. Advice to management here is don't milk the franchise. Be passionate about creativity and innovation. Don't act like a big company. And that is something to take into account here the further down the rabbit hole we go, considering the fact that that was 2008, right? Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull came out. That's a mixed bag depending on how you look at it. I still love the movie. I can defend everything except the monkeys. Still don't quite understand the monkeys. But at the same time, I can see that it was kind of aimless, right? They hadn't had a Star Wars movie in 3 years. Lucas Arts was kind of all over the place. And it does kind of feel like that was around the time Lucas himself was starting to kind of step away. It was that same year we had Star Wars: The Clone Wars come out. And that was, again, kind of a mixed bag of quality for the first couple seasons until it just ramped up in season 3. And we can see that this was kind of a thing. Now, jumping forward over here to 2013, this is the year after Disney acquired Lucasfilm. That was in the fall of 2012. And the cons here saying that Disney gutted the company, estimation being 700 total layoffs this past April out of 1,900 employees. That's not just LucasArts. That would also be ILM, Skywalker Sound, and everything else. The company is currently in turmoil with reorganization. A great number of those laid off are not happy with the new management structure, counting myself being laid off as a blessing. Hopefully, Lucasfilm will rise from the ashes leaner and stronger. Before the next year or two, it's going to be a terrible place to work. Note that below says that George Lucas is CEO of the company. He no longer is. Okay, that's technically Bob Iger. My vote below is based on Bob. I have nothing but good words to say about George. Everybody who's worked directly or indirectly for him loves him. And that again gives you this kind of thought about George Lucas as a whole. He's a very nice, approachable guy, but you can see that maybe after 30 years or so of doing this, he just wasn't happy with it, right? So he just maybe was stepping away, which is why he decided to sell to Lucasfilm. I also would like to just point out that I think that Red Tails crashing and burning in February 2012 was one of the reasons why he sold to Disney, because he put everything behind that movie. He was out there promoting that movie to hell and back, and it was bad. It was not a good movie. And I think that was one of the biggest things here. We can see that Disney taking over the company the way that it did really, really, really impacted the people who worked there. 700 total layoffs on a $4.05 billion acquisition. I mean, that's to be expected, but out of 1,900 employees, 700 is a large margin. Not quite 50%, but that's going to put morale at a super low pace at that time during the reorg. And then that's going to be leading into the announcement and the release of The Force Awakens 2 years later, which is where we pick up here in 2015. It says more politics, more problems with upper management, saying the cons are less pay than peers. They feel that they are compensating you with the glory of working for Star Wars. Absolute pain to commute, build a subway from downtown, not a lot of parking. Now owned by Disney, which is slaughtering the benefits and small company feel. If you work for ILM as an artist, the hours can be terrible. Advice to management here, figure out ILM. The people getting burnt out so fast have almost zero morale. And that's something to consider too. Disney, when they purchased Lucasfilm, everyone thinks they bought Star Wars for the $4 billion. No, they bought Industrial Light and Magic, the number one design house in Hollywood, the number one CG house in Hollywood. Skywalker Sound, same thing. I mean, like this is what they paid the money for. Star Wars and Indiana Jones and all those assets were ancillary, but what they got was the technology. What they got was the business, which is what they wanted. Lucas ran it like a small company feel with 1,900 employees. Disney came in and corporatized the hell out of it. And you see that in 2015. And they're saying here too that there's no like lines to move up. There's nowhere to go. You kind of get deadlocked in the company. And that was in 2015 before the release of The Force Awakens. So maybe in 2016, things got a little bit better, right? Maybe things in 2016 got picked up. Maybe they were just a little bit better to work with, right? Well, it says here a lot of reinventing the wheel because of high turnover rate and bad documentation. Also, moving around departments is difficult unless there's headcount. Advice to management here is try harder at keeping the talent. Additionally, someone here goes on to say that pay was at the very low end, especially for how many hats each coordinator wore while ramping up to full staff for the project. They said after work play is a great incentive, but it can only go so far. Put your money where your mouth is when it comes to asking people to take on extra work for being short staffed. It also says here that growth opportunities seemed rare. A lot of managers who became managers as a result of a promotion who aren't necessarily good people managers. And again, we find out there's a lot going on there in regards to management, right? They bring in people. They kind of said, hey, you get to work on Star Wars. And they're like, I had to work on Star Wars. So they go and they get burnt out. And of course, they try to compensate this with after work play, meaning that they go, oh, after a 10-hour day of designing and building all this stuff, go and blow off some steam. Go, here's a ball pit. Here's a jumpy house sort of thing, right? What they need is vodka and hookers. Let's be fair. That's what they probably need. But they're not going to get that in San Francisco. And we can also see that it's in Marin County. This is north of San Francisco, so there's no commute there in terms of a subway or public transportation. Parking is terrible, and it just kind of feels like with the skyrocketing price of living in that area, it becomes difficult for the employees to maintain a working life, any kind of livelihood that allows them to have some kind of good modicum of living. And that's a big issue. One of the reasons why Silicon Valley is moving to the Northwest. One of the reasons why where I'm living is considered the last oasis in the United States, because it's cheap enough at this point, and a lot of companies are moving here. So a lot of people are going to come with it, which is going to suck for traffic. But hey, that's just the way that this whole thing works. Now you figure, okay, so 2015 Force Awakens came out, $2 billion movie. 2016 came out Rogue One, $1.5 billion movie, or 1.3 billion, somewhere in there. You figure 2017 would be a better year because money is flowing. They now got the cash flow coming out of Lucasfilm. Nope. The con is their payment is not as good as the market. Also, another con here is that most management, they're not generally interested in the employees. Way too many work hours, weekend work, forget about seeing your family. Management makes no moves to improve this after many promises to do so. Additionally, the Disney benefits are terrible. Pay is notoriously low with the bureaucratic structure. It's difficult to get anything done. Paired with the love for the work, getting to build Star Wars and the day-to-day culture, it's golden handcuffs. And then it finishes up here by saying, reward your workers. Disney brags about record profits, but the average worker sees none of that. It's demoralizing. Interesting, isn't it? That was just last year. It's demoralizing to work at Lucasfilm underneath Kathleen Kennedy, not because you don't love what you're working on. We can clearly see that there is a love of the property. There's a clear love of working on these particular films, on these stories, on these events, if you will. But the pay doesn't match what it costs to live in the area. The work hours are way too long. People don't get to see their family. And we just saw this recently with Red Dead Redemption 2's crunch time to get it done. 100-hour work weeks is what was suggested. And a lot of people were furiously upset at Rockstar for how they treated the developers. But these people who work at Lucasfilm and do ILM and do all this other stuff are complaining as well. Where's their violin? Where's their multi article takedowns of Lucasfilm? Oh, that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen because Lucas has got woke, and they're not going to go after that. Rockstar is notoriously controversial, so they'll attack them. But I would be, you will be hard pressed to find any single person talking any bit of crap about this situation, even though we can look at the Glassdoor ratings, and even though it needs to be taken with a grain of salt, still understand that there's something there that needs to be worked on. Anyway, finally, 2018. More comments about bad management and low pay, saying here, cons, male-dominated field, hard for women to get good projects. Also, since the purchase of Disney by some years ago, Lucasfilm ILM morale has been on a slow decline with no bottom in sight. I would recommend those who have been there a long time to think about jumping ship soon. The company needs to change quickly to survive. Advice to management, I would encourage Lucasfilm to reconsider its position on employee incentives. The average benefits and lack of bonuses doesn't make for a very attractive sell in the Bay Area. That's a pretty big hit right there, right? Now, for one, male-dominated field, hard for women to get good projects. It's a company that's led by women, led by Kathleen Kennedy and Kiri Hart. They walk around with their Forces Female t-shirts on, promoting the idea of an inclusive, diverse environment, one that's going to see 50-50 parity between men and women. Kathleen Kennedy herself is on the board of the Time's Up movement, pushing for the 50-50 by 2020 initiative. This is what they want to do. So why in 2018 is a con about Lucasfilm? It's a male-dominated field, hard for women to get good projects. Oh, right, it's management positions, probably. Now, we've talked about this before on the channel, but just to reiterate, you figure if you go into STEM, 75% men, 25% women. That's the general graduation rate. Colleges, in essence, in their own, 2/3 female, 1/3 male. That's the graduating rate. That's also the attendance rate right now. That's how the statistics break down. So it's a male-dominated field because men are going after those jobs and applying for those jobs, and men traditionally tend to work longer hours. That's just a known fact. Men tend to work longer hours, and they put in the hard work, and then they get, I guess, lambasted for it by this particular comment. But it does talk about the morale, and I think the morale is a big thing there. The way that Disney runs the machine, cranking out these movies, always upping the game visually and everything else, constant turnaround, constant cycles, multi-films a year. There's going to be burnout. Absolutely. They are making record profits. Why not have that trickle down? Bernie Sanders took Disneyland to task to get them to publicly, to get them to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour for Disneyland. You got to understand, the theme park side of Disney pulls in like 1/3 of their business. So it's not like it's a small amount of money earned through theme parks. They can afford to pay their people more. They can afford to pay them a decent living wage inside of the area where they're located. It's one of the reasons why I fully acknowledge that these companies need to leave San Francisco. They do, because it's just going to cost too much money, and then that causes a lot of good talent to get worn out faster because they're always paranoid about whether or not they're going to be able to pay their rent. And this is one of the things these companies are going to have to deal with here at some point in time, lest they go and outsource to other countries, which is entirely possible that it's going to happen. So underneath Kathleen Kennedy's leadership, you can see that there's been a slow decline for years. That decline didn't start with her, but she hasn't done anything to solve it. She hasn't done anything to mitigate it. She goes out there rocking her Forces Female shirts, doing everything she's going to do, and she forgets about the little worker who she, while maybe not 100% responsible for, definitely is responsible for many of them. And those people have vocalized their discontent and their anger and their upset on Glassdoor.com. And so I'll link to the blog. You guys want to read it. You guys want to check it out. There's a lot more in there that I didn't cover, a lot more crazy stuff. And this is just the culture that Lucasfilm has created. This is not one that's benefiting the workers. It has nothing to do with gender for the most part. It has everything to do with perception and how in reality these people are not being paid enough money for the work that they do while the company is going out there and talking about record profits. That should be the larger conversation. But instead, it won't be, and that's fine too. I just want to put my thoughts up there on that one. Anyway, what do you guys think about this? Let me know down in the comments below. Do you think that Kathleen Kennedy is running the, is it her fault that morale is low? Is it her fault that this woman is saying that male dominated field, hard for women to get good projects in? Is it all a lie? Is it all a show? Will it ever get fixed? I want to know. Let me know down in the comments. If you guys made it this far, type in Lucasfilm into the chat so I know. And be sure to thumbs up the video, please. Subscribe to the channel. Check back often for more content from me. And remember, if you do want to support the channel, probably the best way is to
turn off that pesky ad block.